Perfect. So, yes, guys, we saw a system, right? So we saw a system where we think of a quantizer in a different way, and we said that we derived a function for that system. So yesterday we said that we need to calculate v of n in terms of u of n and e of n. Then we derived a function, a transfer function, and we came across two transfer functions, one for the signal, which is signal transfer function, and one for the noise, which is noise transfer function. So then we talked about the signal transfer function a little. So we said the location of the pole. So when we equate this, so the location of the pole comes out to be minus a. So when we equate the denominator to 0, the location of the pole comes out to be minus a. And if we have a discrete time system, so our system is basically discrete time, right? And if we want it to be stable, then its poles or the poles of its transfer function should be within the unit circle. So for our signal transfer function, if we say, so over here, what we are trying to do is we need this noise to be highly attenuated. That's why we said, hey, let's put a gain of A over here. That gain will increase the gain of our signal and provide highest attenuation to the noise, because if we see the noise transfer function, then we can see that the noise is getting a very high attenuation due to this A, because when A is tending to infinity, then this A is providing like the noise is getting reduced to 0 when A is tending to infinity. So then we said that if A is, let's say, very high so this is the case where magnitude of A is high in order to reject the quantization noise. So if we want to reject the quantization noise, A must be large. So this is clear. But according to the stability criteria, the pole, so the pole is also minus A, right, for the signal transfer function. So according to the stability criteria, pole minus A must be within this unit circle. So it should be greater than minus 1. So this is, if this is a unit circle, according to the stability criteria, this minus A or this pole should be within this unit circle. So even if we make a system stable by making A within this unit circle, it's not doing its job what we want it to do, because we want the value of A to be higher so that our noise, the noise transfer function, will be rejected. So we want A to be high, but the system demands stability, because if the system is unstable, then anyway it's not of no use. So this is something complication we come across. So then the solution to it is basically we need to replace this box. So over here, first what we had a gain which was A for all range of frequencies, right? So now the question is, we need to replace something over here so that we come up with a solution. Because yeah, definitely this is not a solution. Either if we need our system to work as we want, we need higher A. But if we want our system to be stable, we need A within uh, the unit circle. So obviously that's contradicting within each other. So then, if we want to make this work, let's focus on a fact which we haven't exploited yet. So our input signal lies in lower frequency range. So we all are aware. Basically, it hovers around DC. So DC is zero I mean, at DC it's zero frequencies. So our input signal lies in lower frequency range. So earlier, the system we made, so the system over here which we made had, I mean, the system we made was like for a very large value of A, it made the quantization noise tending to 0 for all range of frequencies. So what do I mean by this? So we had a gain of A, and when we talk about NTF, so for all range of frequencies, the gain was tending to infinity, let's say. So it was very high, and it was rejecting noise for all the range of frequencies according to this NTF or noise transfer function. So now Um, but like, do we really need all the frequencies to be concerned? I mean, our desired input is confined only to lower frequencies, right? So then we can say that it is sufficient if we have a larger gain at lower frequencies, and we don't really care what happens at higher frequencies. So in other words, it's not a problem if A falls with frequency. I mean, as frequency increases, A starts falling. So we need A higher at lower frequencies. We only need the noise to be highly attenuated. So basically, the noise is rejected, which means the noise is highly attenuated. So we need the noise to be highly attenuated at lower frequencies where our input signal lies. So for a noise, I mean, in the sense of noise, it is a high pass behavior. So hence, the gain A must not be chosen very large for all frequencies or all range of frequencies. We only need it to be infinite, ideally infinite. Practically, I mean, it's not infinite, but it's very large. So we only need it to be ideally infinite at low frequencies. I mean, we exactly need it infinite at DC. This is ideal case, but we exactly need very high gain at DC. So low frequency corresponds to Z tending towards 1. So for a discrete system, for the system we are into, the low frequency corresponds to Z tending towards 1. And at DC, Z equals to 1. And this means our input signal is hovering around Z equals to 1 over here. So then we need to think that what we need at this block which satisfies this requirement. So basically what we need at this block is something which gives us gain at, like, which gives us a very high gain at z equals to 1, basically at DC. I mean, ideally a equals to infinity at z equals to 1. We need a very, I mean, high gain, let's say infinity at z equals to 1, and a simple first order transfer function which satisfies this requirement is basically 1 upon 1 minus z inverse. So basically this is a integrator. So its pole lies at z equals to 1. So this transfer function, so if we look at it properly, so at z equals to 1, the gain goes to infinity. So its impulse response is basically, it's an integrator. So its impulse response um, will be starting I mean, it will be a response for all ones which are starting from n equals to 0 to n. And so yeah, as we replace this box with this transfer function, so now this is what we have in our system. So instead of again a over here, now we have 1 upon 1 minus z inverse. So this is our transfer function. And now let's evaluate the signal transfer function for this system and the noise transfer function for this system. So basically this is a modulator, and we have a signal transfer function given by like the system corresponds to a signal transfer function which gives 1 upon 1 minus z inverse divided by 1 plus z inverse upon 1 minus z inverse, which gives us 1. And the noise transfer function is given by 1 plus z inverse 1 minus z inverse. So it comes out to be 1 minus z inverse. So when we plot this anti-f against the frequencies omega, so at DC, so this is DC. At DC, we want the attenuation, we want the gain to be infinite. So if the attenuation is infinite, so basically the rejection to noise is infinite. So the noise is 0. So then at DC, the noise is 0, and at as A falls with frequencies, we have the noise transfer function looking like this. So for frequencies around DC, the magnitude of NTF corresponds to 0, And at z equals to 1, I mean at DC, the mod of NTF is basically 0. And when we look at the NTF and signal transfer functions, so basically the poles are at 0 because the denominator is 1. So poles are at 0. So yeah, now the poles are at 0. So the system is stable, and at lower frequencies, the noise has been rejected very significantly. So this phenomena is somewhat leading us to a noise shaping. So again, so now we implement this system. So basically, we have an integrator over here. We have the input, we have the noise as a source, and basically this block. So yeah, this block is acting as a quantizer. So then we looked at the signal transfer function, which is 1, and the noise transfer function, which is 1 minus the inverse. So after this block, I mean after this quantizer, so this quantizer is followed by a decimation filter. So the decimation filter will be over here, somewhat over here. So this output of from so this output from quantizer, which is V of n, will go into the decimation filter. So we also saw, I mean, this was the uh, behavior or the curve of the NTF. So when we plot it through a range of pi, so first the white noise or the noise was spreaded broadbandly over the range of pi, but now after using an integrator, the behavior of noise is like this. So, but we are using a decimation filter. So let's say we are using a brick wall filter whose bandwidth is 0 to pi by OSR. So the spectral density, so basically the spectral density of the noise before going through this decimation filter will be basically it's delta square by 12 pi because it's spread throughout the range of pi, and it will be mod of NTF e to the power j omega square. So this is how the spectral density is given at the output of the quantizer over here. And after we filter this out, so after we implement the decimation filter, so after filtering this with a brick wall filter with a passband of 0 to pi by OSR, the noise power will be basically from this point to pi by OSR. So we'll integrate it from 0 to pi by OSR and delta square, I mean this quantity. So it's delta square by 12 NTF of e to the power j omega square times it's the function of frequencies, right? So it's d omega. And this gives us in-band quantization noise. So basically, the in-band quantization noise comes up, I mean, to calculate the in-band quantization noise. So basically, what is the magnitude of the noise transfer function? So basically, it is mod of 1 minus a to the power minus j omega, and which comes out to be a function of sine. I mean, it's 2 sine omega by 2. And at very low frequencies, I mean, this is the function of frequency. So at very low frequencies, the mod of NTF comes out to be omega. And as we are considered at lower frequencies, so the in-band noise, so basically this in-band noise is given by delta squared by 12 pi integrating 0 to pi by OSR. And we saw over here the magnitude of NTF is nothing but omega at lower frequencies. So we have it's squared, right? And this quantity comes out of the integration. So it's omega squared d omega. And when we solve it, so the in-band noise comes out to be delta squared by 36 pi times pi cube by OSR. So now by looking at this in-band noise density, if OSR goes up by factor of 2, so if we double the OSR, the in-band noise will lower by a factor of 8. So it's 2 to the power 3, which means the noise decreases by 9 dB, and which is basically 1.5 bit increase in resolution. So now if you guys recall, we saw a case where we simply oversampled and shaped the noise. And there we said that for every doubling of OSR, we are getting an improvement or significant improvement in the resolution of quantizer by 0.5 bits. But now, as we are using integrator, so we are getting the resolution significantly increased from, I mean, now in this case, it is 1.5 bits. So definitely, we seem to be doing a better job than blindly low pass filtering the oversampled signal, where we got 0.5 bits increment for every doubling of OSR. So yeah, definitely this is a good idea. And we can see that the in band, I mean that the signal band, which is 0 to pi by OSR, the quantization noise has pushed itself out of the signal band very significantly, and this phenomena is called noise shaping. So now, if we want a 6-bit quantizer to look like a 10-bit quantizer, earlier, if you guys remember, we need to oversample it, I mean 256 times. Uh, um, so in this case, we just need to double the OSR only 3 times. So basically, we need 2 to the power 3, which is 8x oversampling. So from 256x oversampling, we have just come to 8x oversampling, and which is a very significant improvement. So now in time domain, so let's analyze this in time domain. So in time domain, we have an impulse response of NTF sequence. So basically, we have the noise transfer function as 1 minus z inverse, right? So for this sequence, we have an impulse response in time domain, and which looks like this, which has 1 and minus 1, and all other samples are 0. So let's talk about it more. So the sum of samples of impulse response of NTF must be 0, because if we evaluate NTF at z equals to 1, it comes out to be 0, as NTF or mod of NTF is equals to 0 at DC, or basically at z equals to 1. So the sum of the samples of impulse response of the NTF must be 0. So why? I mean, why must be 0? Because if we evaluate the NTF at z equals to 1, I mean at DC, it comes out to be 0, and the magnitude is basically 0 at DC, or basically at z equals to 1, we have 0 magnitude. That's what we saw. So the impulse response should also be having the sum of all the samples uh, equals to 0. So the NTF is, which is basically 1 minus z inverse, can be also written in this way, and the pole comes out to be 1, because numerator, when we equate to 0, we get the 0, I mean we get the 0, and the 0 lies at z equals to 1, and when we equate the denominator with 0, we get the pole, and the pole is at 0. So obviously this is stable, and if inverse transform of NTF is denoted by h of n, then z inverse of NTF of z comes out like, which is basically h of n. So then by this logic, summation of h of n must be 0. So we'll talk on this more in the next video. So that's all from my side in this video. Thank you so much. And yes, if you have doubts, please let me know.